B1 family, welcome to Blacklogic. We know there's been a lot of viral things going on in the Black media space, especially when it comes to delineation from any other Caribbean or African groups, and pretty much setting ourselves aside and being our own ethnic group, which this has been the topic of conversation ever since Cameron came out and was basically stating that he is Black American and not African American. And I think a lot of people in some regards and some groups took offense to that, but not understanding the entirety breakdown of how Black Americans view themselves. Not all Black Americans, but I would like to believe majority of Black Americans have the same perspective in how they categorize themselves. So today, joining this discussion I have with my good buddy Afro Elite, I'm gonna bring him to the stage. Brother, go ahead and introduce yourself.
B1, to you, brother, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Afro Elite. I also have a YouTube channel. It's Afro Elite on all platforms. I speak on Black empowerment. I'm a advocate for it, an activist for it. I do a lot of things in the city of Chicago for it. I do a lot of things nationally for it, going to other events and doing things really to uplift the people and trying to spread the message and awareness to the people so we can dismantle the system of white supremacy and replace it with a system of justice.
So with the current video of this show, what are your quick thoughts on the different people from African countries stating that Black Americans are not African? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is that look, we have to let's get the language clear. Africa is a continent, and we have DNA ties to the continent, but we are not from the continent directly. Our parents are not from there directly. Our grandparents are not from there directly. Our great-grandparents are not from there directly. So to be very honest with you, they're not entirely incorrect. They're not very wrong when they say that. Now, the issue that a lot of people have when they say that is they say that with a little bit of vitriol and a little bit of condescension when they say that. They say that as if we're some lost people, as if we don't know who we are and we're some lesser form of Black people because we're not connected to Africa. They don't say it in a way of just being factual or saying it out of respect or just reality. They say it in a way to say, look at how much better we are than them. So what they're saying is not inaccurate. However, what they're saying is not inaccurate, but the thing is that we have to understand why they're saying it. It's not really out of a good place.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think that just setting the stage right, it kind of, Black Americans, descendants of African slaves or the original people of African origin that were already here prior to the slave ships that came, we have formed our own ethnic group outside of Africa, hundreds and thousands of years. So when we look at that, we have a very unique historical context that's shaped by slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, all of the advancements we made in medicine, our culture, all the advancements we made in engineering and innovations throughout the modern world, that some of these things are still around here today. So when I look at identifying who we truly are, we're just a ethnic group that has been long distance cousins of the African continent. And when we look at other groups like the Jamaicans, the Trinidadians, those dark melanated Caribbeans, they never come out and state that they are, quote, African Jamaican and labelize these terms where it's connecting themselves to Africa, because it will be asinine. And here's a small revelation. Only the Black Caribbean countries call themselves what they truly are, right? I'm a Jamaican. You don't hear African Jamaican, but when I went to Colombia, the majority of people who were in power were of whiter and lighter skin. So when they saw Black Colombians, they would say Afro Colombians. You never heard the term Afro Jamaican because everybody automatically think that Jamaicans are really dark skinned. And guess what? They're the majority of that island. So a lot of these things have to do with the population of how people label themselves. Um, if you have a majority black country, they are normally named their nationality, like because are you Nigerian or are you from Nigeria? I'm American because I'm from America. So I know I'm getting a little deep there, but nonetheless, I think it's to show us how we break down these these three categories, with it be nationality, race, and ethnic. What's your thought?
Well, I agree with you. And my thing is, we have to look at it like this. Africa is not, for Africa is a continent. We have to
Right,
understand, not a country. So when people are like their nationality, when people refer to their nationality, they refer to the country that they belong to, of their
correct.
origin, of their birth. The country of our birth, whether people like it or not, is American. Is America. I mean, it is the country, just like Jamaicans to Jamaica, Haitians to Haiti, you know,
Right.
Nigerians to Nigeria, and all of that stuff. We have to understand when we say the word African, people misconstrue it because people will use Africa in the context of Africa being a race, then in the context of Africa being a nationality, then in the
Right.
context of Africa being an ethnicity, and all of these things are different. You know, all these things are different. We were not born in Africa. Our parents were not born in Africa. Our parents' were not born in Africa. You know, we started, even if we don't necessarily go all the way to the indigenous history of it, we built the country. There was not a United States of America prior to us coming here. So we did build it. So our nationality and our ethnicity literally is American. You
Well,
know,
let's define it. Let's
necessarily.
define it very quickly, if you don't mind. Let's
Oh,
define
yes.
it.
Okay.
Nationality is the status of belonging to a nation. It can be acquired by birth or naturalization. Nationality is usually the country where a person was born and is where they're a legal citizen, which you just stated. We're going to move on to race. They have a couple of different definitions here. Race can also refer to a culturally structured way of looking at and interpreting reality and human categorization. Race can also refer to human categorization such as Caucasoid, Negroid, Mongoloid, Asiatic subgroup, so on and so forth. And that's according to some sources from the Britannica. And then we have ethnic for last, about belonging to a population group or subgroup made up of people who share a common cultural background or descent. So I think that is where people really get confused and murky, is that your nationality is the country that you was born in. So yeah, if you was born in Ethiopia, then you're Ethiopian. But when we talk about race, not every country has not every country, most countries do have a color structure because everybody from that country is majority that complexion. You don't
Yeah.
really hear about the Sudanese saying we have colorism in Sudanese because everybody's really dark skinned. You don't hear about colorism so much in Kenya because majority of people are dark skinned. So they don't really racialize anything in those countries because they are the majority of the population. But when you
Yes.
go outside of these dark melanated countries and you come to America, America put race on the book from the very jump. Ever since we was in slavery, they already call us Negro to nigger to all these other things. So we've always had a racial category. And I think that's the difference where people get mixed up at.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct. Um. Every we have to the way the world works. Everybody has a race. You're a part of you're black. You might be white. You might be Asian. These are all different racial categories. Now, in certain parts of the world, you don't need to identify your racial identity is not brought up in the forefront on certain documentation or anything like that, because if 99% of the people in that land or of that race, you don't need to specify you're in that race. You know what I'm saying? For instance, if 90% of a land mass is black, then on your driver's license, it doesn't need to say black because it's kind of
Right.
already implied. If you're here, you're black. You know what I'm saying? America it has a lot of different races, and mainly the white and the black race. It
Right.
started from there. So they have developed the racial categorization of it that other people weren't really doing. You know what I'm saying? In their own country. So we have to really understand the origin and the reasons as to why that is. Because a
I
lot
think
of
you.
people will say, "Oh, I'm sorry."
No, go ahead. Go and finish.
Because a lot of people will say, "Well, in their countries, they don't identify as black." You have to there's a factor into that. You have to kind of have a little bit of a deeper understanding about how the world works outside of America. Now, to America, it looks like, to a degree, it might be, but to a black American, it looks like you're running away from your blackness if you don't have black on your paperwork. But to outside, if you understand the deeper level of it, it's like, okay, well, no, everybody is that, so you don't even need to say it's that. Just by you being a Nigerian, you're gonna be black. You know what I'm
Right. And
saying?
I think you kind of lead me right into the next segment here. And a lot of what you have, what you were stating has to do with colorism.
Yeah.
And not going too far back when we talk about colorism, but this particular article details the impact of European colonization on Africa, including, all of the atrocities and slave trade and exploitation of African nation. But what's most important that I read in this article, Afro, is that it highlights the Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885, where the European powers partitioned Africa with, without African representation. When they did this, they came inside of a meeting. They said, we're going to split Africa up. We're going to colonize them. We're going to, quote unquote, enslave them. And which kind of led to, leading to the ruthless plundering and extrapolation of all the resources there. Because when you look at certain countries, the focus on the Congo that was under, Belgian rule, when they, colonized the Congo and the brutal exploitation of its resources, which they took gold, palm oil, rubber, ivory. So this was essentially how things really after slavery broken up and colonized the mind of a lot of people in Africa. Because of course, I interviewed this Indian lady. She was British, and she wrote a book called The Black Rose, and it had to do with colorism in India. Because I know that that the British colonized India for like 100 years, and so India, like herself, she suffered from skin bleaching. She was addicted to skin bleaching, and she said that goes on a lot. It's very prevalent in India, the same as it is in some African nations like Nigeria and some Caribbean nations like Jamaica. I know there's other pandemics of people using these things, and this all derives from when Europe decided, oh, we're going to release the slaves, but then we're going to partition their continent so we can all have equal resources according to our GDP, our power, whatever, right? Military power, I'm bigger than you, so you get the smaller country. I don't know. But all of these names that they call themselves now today, the Europeans gave them that name. They came up with the term Nigeria and Kenya. These are not the official names of these kingdoms before they were countries. So you have to dive a little bit into that for me. Not necessarily that deep, but how that mind, the colonized mind, works.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And a lot of these people who are from these countries in Africa, well, not the people, I would say, a lot of these countries in Africa, they have a bit of their indigenous prior to the colonization. They have a bit of their indigenous customs, traditions, and ways of life, but a lot of that stuff is changed. A lot of that stuff that they practice now and in their countries and their customs and things like that, it has changed. We have to acknowledge that. So because of a lot of that stuff, and because of the fact that they've had um, a puppet master controlling the resources and controlling the way of life that they lived in that country, a lot of them have been subconscious, mentally indoctrinated. Now, we were
Right.
physically, as Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, we were physically enslaved. And the thing is that we were physically enslaved, but we never had the. And some people can say it's a good or a bad thing. We're not really going to get into why, but for us, we were able to utilize the fact that we could see clearly without any bit of confusion, without any interruption, clearly who the oppressors were.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
It's I don't think people bring up the Berlin Conference and how Africa got partitioned because various European nations, Belgium, Germany, Britain, France,
Mm-hmm,
Spain. I'm probably missing a couple. I know Italy got fought off by Ethiopians. Now, all of them are implicated in committing some of the most heinous acts during colonization, such as forced labor, chopping off people apart, mutilation, genocide, as
mm-hmm,
well as raping and just taking people's property, you name it.
mm-hmm,
So they have a lot of, and then also within those governments, they had a lot of racist legislation. Look at South Africa. They instead of us, we just called ourselves Black because we had the one drop rule when it comes to Black Americans of what race you would be considered versus in South Africa, there's white, colored, Black. That's it, and they actually use the term Black as well in South Africa, which I learned. So the construct of color, nationality, race, and how all of these people are coming out and saying, like Dominicans, they're coming out and stating, "Oh, I'm not Black." So and I think this is where I kind of get mixed up just a little bit, even though I understand it very, very clearly. Black, they automatically relate that to being Black American, and that's not what that's about. Black Americans simply state the term Black because we're considering our race, right?
mm-hmm,
And then we put the term American on it because we're from American and we have American culture that's mixed in with our Black culture. So we're foundational Black Americans when we look at it, right? Because we've been here before the inception of the country, 1526. So when we look at this, the country wasn't established and let go from British rule until July 4th, 1776. You see what I'm saying?
mm-hmm. And you make a good point too, because the thing is like you said about confusion, about them feeling a certain type of way about themselves. You know what I'm saying? The oppression, and it's all the same oppressor, but the different methods of oppression affected them mentally different than it affected us. So for the most part, we have remained clear with the clear understanding than they have done. You know what I'm saying? So you're
Right.
right. Like when they say things like "I'm not Black," and a lot of the anti-Blackness they have is because a lot of them are confused with the fact that I'm not Black. Look at my skin tone. A lot of them look at skin tones as different. To highlight what you were saying, as different races of people. You know,
Right.
me and you have two different skin tones, but me and you are not going to look at each other as two different races of people. We're
Correct.
still
Correct.
Black.
But do
You
you
know,
think they think about race when they saying that I'm not Black? Because one, she's very informative. She actually helped me to understand how they think about it. And then two, it was of course entertaining. What's your thoughts?
okay, yeah, I think that video was entertaining and it was informative because here's the thing: when we ask where you're from, that let's be very, very clear. There's no country called Black. You know what I'm saying? When we say
Right.
we're black, we mean our race is black.
Right.
When they say they're not black, they're Dominican, they're looking at black like they're other than black. It,
Right.
which is what she's saying. Now, what she said, I think, was very interesting because she said a lot. But what she said that would caught my attention, I want to say the most, is when she says when people bring up how can you be Dominican if you're black, and a lot of that is because of the fact that the white, because let's be honest, Dominican is not a race, but the white Dominicans and the lighter skinned Dominicans, they're the representatives of Dominicans. They're the people you see when you view TV.
Absolutely.
So for people who have not gone to the Dominican Republic, when they see a black person, they're going to be like, "Oh, you can't be Dominican because you're too dark to be Dominican." So
They're the face of the country, the lighter skinned
exactly,
people.
exactly. So that's why a lot of these people be all like, "Oh no, I am Dominican" or whatever. They have to like fight to claim their Dominican nationality. So a lot of that is true because of the fact that the darker skinned Dominicans don't really get representation. Now, when they're talking, because I feel like when they're talking to us though, and they say that I'm not black, they look at it like, no, you're black. We're not black because we have a little bit of something else. We have a little bit of like Southern American thing with us too. They're looking at us. I think us as Black Americans, we're like the definition of black, and they look at themselves because they have Hispanic, sometimes Hispanic ties. They look at themselves that they're black, but they got something else with them, so they're not as black as we. That like they're looking at ethnicity when we say that.
Right.
I'm not.
Right.
Your
Correct.
ethnicity is black. We're not saying our ethnicity is black. Our race is black.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? They're looking at it like, well, we have different ethnicities. You're the black ethnicity. I'm the Dominican ethnicity. No, we're all black. We're just the American ethnicity, and you're the Dominican ethnicity. So
Correct.
if you really listen to what she has to say, I think that's when she was just really explaining why they think that way. But I think that's why they have that flaw. The I'm not black, I'm Dominican, is because they're looking at it like, oh, my Dominicanness comes above my blackness.
Yeah, they're putting their nationality above their race, and I think that can be very detrimental to them in the long run. Black Americans not being African, that's kind of the ongoing thing now because
Mhm.
certain people who are okay. I had another clip there, but been having a discussion for quite some time now, and I think that when it comes to us now, I want you to kind of think about this. Is it that we project the term black on other people because we have been indoctrinated with that term? You ever thought about? I mean, I think about a lot of things. So when I think about the term black and how when people come over, we know that we're referring to race. We're not referring to our country like other people do. And so when we say you come over, it's like, oh, I'm Dominican. It's like, oh, okay. It does make you think because again, we have been taught to see Dominicans who are very light skinned. So when we see someone our complexion or darker or similar to a complexion of a Jamaican, we do a kind of a second guess. But if you know the history behind Dominican Republic, then of course you'll come to your senses and understand why.
Yeah.
So
And that's a good point. That's a good point that you made. Um, we project that and everything like that, and a lot of that is because of the fact that of our history and how we've been
right,
treated in this country. So for the longest time, we didn't like to be largely we didn't like to claim America.
true.
So it's a lot of that of I'm technically American, but I'm not American in spirit. You know what I'm saying? Because of the way this country treats black people. So we have almost been bred to or conditioned, I would say, to reject nationality and just look at the race. You know what I'm saying? So it's all like, okay, well, we not American, but we are black, so I'm black, you're black, you're black, you're black. Nobody else rejects their nationality. Nobody else rejects their own ethnicity.
That's a
They're like,
very, very good point.
I'm I'm Dominican. You know what I'm saying? So you saying I'm black? No, I'm Dominican, because they're putting. And now I think that's the flaw that they're making, though, because they put their nationality before their race. You know what I'm saying? So that's a bigger flaw, even over the flaw that we've just completely ignored our nationality. But at least we understand our race, which is really the bigger factor in how we're going to be treated in the world.
Here's a contrary refute of what you just stated to kind of get your wheels spin just a little bit. So they tell us they're Dominican, and we say, you black, right? Why would we even ask them that? Because here's another thing. When we say, hey man, where you from? Oh, I'm Jamaican. Oh, okay. We don't say, are you black?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like we have these colored eyes as well, because like you stated before, the representation of those countries, like Colombia, Costa Rica, are light-skinned, Latinos versus the majority of the population, which are dark, just like Brazil. When I went to Brazil, we went to Copacabana, Brazil, and Rio de Janeiro, and the people that you'll see, downtown, the city, on TV are white Brazilians. So people think Brazilian people are white. Majority, I think, is 70% of the population identify as Afro-Brazilians. And so it goes back to state that any country that is ran by the white power structure or is predominantly white, those black folk who identify with being black from the continent of Africa, okay, those are the ones who usually put African or Afro in it, not by their own terms, but by the white power structure terms, just as well as ours done with African American.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Because even though they are the majority, they've been forced to almost like live almost as the minority. Like, correct. For instance, a white Brazilian, they don't have to identify as a white Brazilian. They correct. Would just be Brazilian by default.
Absolutely.
But a black Brazilian, despite being the majority of the country, they have to identify as a Afro-Brazilian. Correct. You know what I'm saying? So they've kind of made, culturally speaking, the majority become the minority in that sense. So that's a really good point that you brought up. And that's why a lot of them, when you understand, that's why a lot of them really fight to put their nationality first, because in their home countries, the Afro-Brazilians and all, the Afro-Dominicans, they're constantly almost stripped from that.
Correct.
They don't really get to live the same with the same level of the word is slipping my mind, but they don't really get to live and fully embrace their nationality as their peers do. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
As a white Brazilian doesn't have to constantly fight to be verified, and they don't have their nationality is not always brought up into question. But a black Brazilian, their nationality, despite having the majority, is always brought up into question, which is why you see the darker skin of these people, of these places. They're constantly reminding to try to reiterate and verify their nationality.
It makes me think about the gentleman who they said Jesse Jackson, but I believe somebody else came up with it, and Jesse Jackson kind of ran with it. And so they stated that I believe he coined the term African American. And of course, this is kind of during the time of the Pan-African movement. And so Black people, Black Americans were actually adopting this term, which now we're trying to delineate as we should, because it has not been beneficial. And in contrary, opposing dynamic to the term African American, when you start to tell, people who are non-Black that, hey, I'm Black American, they label, oh, yeah, African American, like, no, I'm Black American. And they tell you what the difference is. And I said, well, I'm not from Africa, I'm from America. I remember having this conversation at this lounge with this white gentleman, and I was trying to tell him the difference. I said, do I call you a European American because your ancestry and your lineage derives from, your long-term lineage derives from Europe. So no one calls you a European American. You just state that you are American. And I also wonder if, Black people in America, Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, should we push back on a legal stance as well as a social stance when we're out and about and we're having these discussions of giving non-Black folk what that sounds like, because it for them it doesn't sound idiotic, but to me it does. Like, oh, African American. I said, no, I'm an American. I'm a Black American. In that case, you are European American. You kind of get the dynamic where I'm going at with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of it circles back to how what we were saying earlier with the African Brazilians and just the white Brazilians who can just be the default, because European Americans, white Americans, they don't have to say, well, I'm a white American. It sounds funny to you when you hear it because you never hear it. But with Black people, we're always I'm not just an American. By default, they've made the word American white.
Correct.
So it's that by default. So if you are an American and you're not white, you have to have like a prefix before. Well, I'm an African American. I'm a Black American. You know what I'm saying?
You know what it was? I think Tariq said it. It's almost like calling us immigrants, and we're not immigrants, because you'll have people, on the news, on social media, stating that, oh, this is a country of immigrants. No, it's not.
Yes.
I said it a couple of times in my broadcast. I said this is a country of what we like to believe that the so-called Native Americans that are Mongolian, as well as the original Aboriginal people who were, dark melanated people. Then you have the Pilgrims, or the killers, the rapers, and slave masters, and then you have us, the descendants of slaves, foundational Black Americans. So when we look at this, we were here prior to the country being established. So people who came after that, especially after the 1890 census, you guys are immigrants. We either be second or third or even first generation, but we're not immigrants. And I think people don't understand the establishment of the country and how that date plays a significant role. What they more so look at is who conquered the land. So they look at this as a white land or white country because the Europeans conquered it by genociding a group of people and enslaving and genociding another. So that's the way I look at it. And I have a video very quickly. I believe she's from South Africa.
Okay. Right, so we are here with Kana. Beautiful Kana. The first question is, what nationality would you never date and why?
Somalian. Somalia.
Why?
Because they don't like us Black people, innit? And they're Black themselves, and they're confused. You understand? When you ask a Somalian man what ethnicity they are, they say Somalian.
Most Somalis will not identify themselves as Black, but they will, however, identify themselves as a Somali.
The Somalia is not ethnicity, it's a country. So I have Somalian friends,
yeah,
and I'll tell them this, and they know it's true. And they will tell me about it. If I go with my group of Black friends, they will tell me what the other Somalian group is saying about us. I heard about Jared, Jared, whatever it's called. West
Jared,
or whatever, but they're really saying, what you doing with that Black thing? And I'm not trying to par with that. You like me. Does your mom like me, though? Exactly.
So yeah, I actually like that. Yeah, she's originally from South Africa, but You know what's funny about that? She stated something very prevalent. She stated that a lot of people are getting their country mixed up with their race. And then it
Yeah.
made me think about something else, Afro, not just race. It made me think of the unique lineage and experience that the South Africans have been through and is still going through some to some extent with apartheid, and as well as foundational Black Americans in America with our lineage and what we are still going through today. We have a certain outlook on white supremacy. We have a certain outlook on white privilege, okay? Because
Yes.
when I was in Cape Town, South Africa is predominantly white, right? But in the entire country, okay, the entire country is 92% colored and Black South Africans. Okay, that's just kind of where they classify themselves. While another 8% are white South Africans or the Boer people. They're the ones who control the country. But but it helped me to understand the racial construct, in other countries, how she would state that Somali people do not refer to themselves as Black. They refer to themselves as Somali as though that was a race. And we're talking about race, they're talking about nationality. And then we can, get into the ethnic part later. But I think that is the major confusion that South Africans and Americans understand race, because that was projected on us through apartheid, slavery, Jim Crow, etc., versus the other countries where they colonized them, right? Controlled their governments, told them what they were and was not, and now they have a different mindset than those who were truly oppressed.
Yes.
So
I fully agree with you. And I think that out of all of the countries in Africa, we have the most, I would say, mentally in common with South Africa due to our similarities in our oppression. Like you said, the fact that it's with Americans and South Africans, it's very direct. You have a white person calling you the N-word and saying that they're just openly saying they're better than you. In America, with slavery, with Jim Crow and all of that, and then in South Africa with apartheid. In these other countries, it's indirect. So you don't see a non you see your own race. That's all you see, your own race. You see corruption. Now it's orchestrated by white folks, but you don't see the white people. You know what I'm saying? So there's a level of confusion that happens in these other countries that blur it to where they're not seeing racial oppression as clearly as we are, and as clearly as even South Africa. Now, I would say I think we've been more clear than South Africa is, but South Africa comes in the second place to really nobody, because everybody else has a bit of confusion as to it. That's why they want to put their ethnicity before their race and certain things like that. South Africa doesn't tend to have that problem because their oppression was so direct by the oppressor class, the white oppressor class, that they weren't even allowed the luxury of being confused as to who is responsible, just like us.
when I also think about it, some things that you stated, not only, well, I guess the overall picture, the big picture is this: we either be Caribbeans, a lot of people, of course, mix with African ancestry and blood, Caribbeans, or those sub-Saharan countries in Africa where you can just say you're Black. I don't care what you state because of the complexion of your color and the figuration of your body and our heads. We have different heads than Mexicans. We have different heads than Caucasians. But I think the part that everyone's missing here, not everyone, I think we get it. We understand that genetically, DNA base, we are descended from Africans. Yeah. We're descended from Africans, but our nationality is America. Okay. But all of our race that descended from Africa are black, but our ethnic group is 1000% different, right? Because if we go back, and I had another video queued up, but I really want to break down this definition once more. Or belonging to a population group or subgroup made up of people who share a common cultural background. Has nothing to do with race. Has nothing to do with race. But because we were grouped together from all those different African countries when the slave ships came over, or the original people that were already here, and we intermingled, we became a subgroup from 1,000 years from Africa. So we are different people, just as well as the Jamaicans, just as well as the Trinidad and Tobagans, the dark melanated Caribbeans, the people from the Bermuda, as well as what you call the other part of the Caribbean where Nassau, Bohemian people. Yeah. So we have a very distinctive lineage and background in history, which forms our ethnic group. Because even in Black America, right? In Black America, you have different ethnic groups, right? It's kind of like you have people in the Black media. You have people who are vegan and want to pray to trees. You know, you have a hip hop ethnic group, right? These other little subcultures within a major subculture, which forms our own Black American ethnic group. But we have commonality throughout foundational Black Americans, our lineage, our history, our present, and our fight today.
Yes. And you make a good point. And I think that that's where a lot of people get things confused. I think a lot of people get things confused because too often people use race, nationality, and ethnicity. They use those three things interchangeably.
Absolutely.
You know, and those things, each one of those words have very different meanings, you know. Right. So some ways it can be like, for instance, when we say the word Jamaican, you can just assume nine times out of 10 that person is Black as well. Their race is Black as well.
Not that Asian lady.
Exactly. You do have Asians now in Jamaica, but
that's what I'm saying. No, it was an Asian lady. It was an Asian lady that came on. I believe she first came on TikTok, and she spoke with a Jamaican accent. Her family was Chinese, and she said, "I'm Jamaican," and everybody was like, "No, she can't be Jamaican." And I'm like, "This, guys, she's Jamaican. Her nationality is Jamaican. It is that sometimes we're kind of going back and forth about nationality and race. She never said I'm Black. She said I'm Jamaican. Yeah. If what's the dude name that played basketball? Giannis Akunte, whatever his name is. His family is from Nigeria, but I think he's Greek. That's his nationality. But he's Black, right? You see what I'm saying? People like, no, he's Nigerian. He's Black. That's his race. But they refer to him as his nationality, as though the nationality is a race. I just don't understand how people get these things confused. I mean, for me, it was very simple. Once you read it, it's like, okay, here are the definitions. Oh, okay. American is not my race. Because like, what race are you? I'm American. That's not a race.
Yeah, it's not. And that's why we have mix up. Like, for instance, let's be very honest, and this tends to bother people when we say it. Elon Musk. If Elon Musk is an African American by definition, he was born in Africa. Exactly, that's another one. But he's not Black. His race is not Black. He's still a white man. You know what they're not Black. You know, that's the problem when you try to make nationality and race and ethnicity, when you try to make it seem like they're all the same thing. They're not all the same thing.
Right. And his people derive from the Netherlands, the Dutch people, right? That was the harsh people that colonized South Africa. And someone was stating, oh, that's because they were from the Viking area. Some bull, I don't know. Here's another clip I pulled up about somebody asks her, "What are you mixed with?"
Oh my god, you're black. Like, listen, guys, if you go to Africa, you'll see people as black as my freaking t-shirt. You know what I mean? So to me, I'm not fully black. Like, to me, like, I'm a halfer. Like, I'm light. My mom's like, girl, you're pale. I know she did not say as black as a t-shirt, girl. Javon, give a side eye. Give a side eye. Oh yes, girl, slay. Give another one for us. Yes, girl, yes. Get into it. When will our people ever be freed? When will we ever be freed?
Let me tell you something, Afro Elite. The internet is stupid. Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is.
The internet is stupid because she's up here. She's darker than you, by the way. And she's talking about there's people in Africa docking to my shirt. And she's right. Okay. I forgot where me and my wife was coming from. I don't know. It was from no, where was it from? Nonetheless, I don't recall. But here's the thing. We were coming back from somewhere going through the DFW airport, and it was this tall, maybe about 6'4", 6'5", talking about dark, like dark. And I said, "Hey man, you from Sudan?" He said, "Huh?" He said, "Yeah, how do you know?" And I was like, it was you're tall, you're skinny, and and I'm not being divisive when I say this, but he's almost like blue black, almost like purple black.
Yeah,
That's how
yeah.
dark Sudanese people is. And I saw a clip. I'm not gonna pull it up because I don't recall where I found it. It was on TikTok, but I forgot how I found it. But it was basically how some Sudanese people do not consider themselves black. And again, we go back to, do some people, especially coming from an American, when they say the term black, they're thinking black American versus their race being black. But the only way they don't think about that is because they don't have race in their country, because they just have countrymen who are Sudanese that everybody look the same. You see what I'm getting at? Because I think a lot of people may not understand the rest of the world or the rest of the white supremacist world, even though they were colonized. But nonetheless, they're not really understanding the construct, because 98% of their kinmen are, their same color. So they don't really think about, oh, I'm black as a race. That's an American thing. That's a Western European and South African thing.
I agree. I also wanted to, I think it's important to add that that's the crucial mistake that they are making mentally, that they have been taught and they make mentally, because the thing is that they'll say that it does, to me, I'm going to say to me, it does stem from a level of anti-blackness, because the thing is that when you hear them say that, it kind of does accurately reflect on how that country treats or deals with racism and white supremacy. These are the same people who will come over here and be all like, there is no racism. These are the people who are like, there's no black. I'm not black. I'm Dominican, or I'm not black. Right. I'm putting my nationality first. You see reflected in their behavior when they get to the States. You know what I'm saying? You'll see them giving passes to instances of racism and discrimination and things like that. So it's duality to it, because the thing is that to them, race kind of really don't exist where they're from, if 99% of whoever is that race. It's just like, for instance, America. We were saying this earlier. Like America, the default is white.
Correct.
Or you go to Brazil. Everybody in Brazil is not white, to be honest. Every Brazilian is white. But Brazil, the default is white.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? You don't have to say I'm a white Brazilian. You don't have to say that, because the default is white.
Right. They don't. They just say Afro-Brazilian. And like I was stating before, when I went over there, over 70% of the Brazilians are black.
Yeah.
But again, it's whoever is in control of the power. So
I'm not upset with y'all because I know you're mentally ill, which is why one day I'm going to open up a hospital for mentally ill Africans. I'm not upset with
and I think that's where we get mixed up at, because when they state that I'm not black, I'm African. They say, well, we don't really look at race like that. We don't really look at the structure in which Americans, were enslaved about their skin color. And I'm like, how does that make sense with, over 85% of Africa being colonized? And colonized, they had a color caste system within those countries. And matter of fact, the formation of your country, the formation and the creation of your name is from the white power structure. So how is it that you don't look at race, where the 1 to 2% that was controlling said country, whether it be Portugal that colonized Angola and Mozambique, or the Netherlands and the Dutch with South Africa, then all the British countries, Nigeria, all these other, Ghana, the Ivory Coast was France, and then there's some other countries, but nonetheless, all these white European countries colonized them, partitioned their land out, and then told them the name of their new country. Now, since this happened, since they were colonized for so darn long, people don't even remember some of the names of the original lands of Africa. People are still arguing, is Kemet Egypt, is Kemet the United States, that when the two continents was joined. I've heard so many theories, it's ridiculous. But I think that by them being semi-anti-black, because the way that the Western world has shaped the term black as dirty, lazy, thug, they don't want to even refer to themselves as black, not understanding that you're living in a world of white supremacy, and the safest place that you are, especially if you're from a dark Caribbean country or a sub-Saharan African country, that is the safest place. But you can't then have be bipolar and have two identities when you go to Europe or you come to America and people are calling you black and you're not understanding. They're not talking about your nationality, which you associate your race with. They're talking about your race, which you are in this country.
Yes. You're absolutely correct with that. And like I said, that's a part of the mistake that they're making. When we say oh, well, you're black, and this is why I'm glad we're having this broadcast, because we're clearing up a lot of the confusion. When we say we're black, sometimes even as Black Americans, because we were, as far as black people in America, we were the default. Foundational Black Americans, we were the default. Most black people in America are FBA. You know what I'm saying? So we are the default. So when we say, we don't really have to say our ethnicity, because if you see another black person in the country, you kind of by default know that they're black. We just refer to each other as black. And a lot of that too is because of the fact that we've, like I said before, we've had this thing where we didn't want to claim our nationality. We didn't like to associate ourselves with America. So when we say you're black and everything, it's kind of like, almost the best way to put it is like a language barrier. You know what I'm saying? To them, though, a lot of them, like if we go to Somalians, a lot of them, they don't like to claim that they're black, not because of pride and love for their ethnicity, but it's really stemming from anti-blackness. Like you will hear stories from people from Africa, like I didn't even know what a white person looked like. We don't understand race. Let's be very, very clear. You understand race. There's no group of people who don't understand race. There's pictures, and we're going to have to be very honest about this. There's picture statues even of white Jesus in some of these African countries. White people go visit. They have certain words for white people. So they call them, I think, a Mzungu or something like that. I forget. Mzungu. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's certain words for them, so they know what a white person is, and they know that there is a difference. Okay, like you said, when it comes to skin bleaching in colorism, they understand that it's a difference. They treat lighter skinned people differently than they treat darker skinned people.
Especially in those countries. Yes.
So when they're over here and they act obtuse and they act like they don't understand racism or racial power structures, that's coming from a very disingenuous place, because it's not the same here, but they do understand the concept.
It made me think about something about what you said about Jesus and how they portray him in Africa. I don't know if you knew this, but in Nigeria they have the largest Jesus statue in Africa, and the features of it is a white male. And then here's a second point, going back to something about being Black American. I don't know if you ever noticed this, but Black Americans, sometimes we separate ourselves from other Black Americans who has not had a Black experience, right?
Okay.
Now, I know these are not two good examples, so don't get me wrong. When we started to realize that Obama wasn't a foundational Black American, then we understood the things he didn't do. Then here's another point. He never lived a Black experience, because growing up now, especially if you're a baby boomer, Generation X, and some millennials, I think things are getting better, but yeah, there's still some people, of course, living in poverty. But during that era, we had these Black experiences that kind of cultivated and created our culture, right? You had all these different experiences. You can tell people, soul food, or some of the games we used to play, that was part of our culture. So when we look at people who have not had, a Black experience, but they was privileged, which was very few of us, do you think that sometimes we ostracize them? Because I'm really trying to think, have I ever done that? Because, oh man, he's a square, because he maybe grew up in the suburbs and his family had money, where I would like to believe 85 to 90% of Black Americans, especially during my era, was poor.
Yeah. Yeah, to a degree. And I think that there is, even though I don't agree with that method, I think we
have to
understand kind of the reasoning behind that, because when most Black people, I'm not going to say are from the hood necessarily, but most Black people did not grow up in a very well-off situation. Even if they kind of were, their family were able to make it out of that, most of us did not grow up in a super well-off situation in comparison to other groups of people in this country. So there's common experiences, whether you're from Chicago, Atlanta, Texas, wherever, right? So we understand that. And when we see a Black person that doesn't have that type of experience, ain't no food in the fridge or something like that, when we see a Black person like that, those Black people tend to have a certain outlook on society that is, well, Black people just need to work harder. Black people need to stop listening to rap music. They have a very condescending type of outlook on to Black society.
Correct.
That we need to hold ourselves accountable. Now, of course, I believe in holding yourself accountable, but it's well, why did you run from the police type of energy that they have,
Right.
So Black people are kind of conditioned to, when they witness a Black person does not stem from that Black experience, they can kind of judge them.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? You put them in a certain category. Now, and every time is not necessary. I mean, because if your parents are well off, you're probably going to be well off. It's not your fault. And that doesn't necessarily make you anti-Black, even though that is a common trait among certain Black people who are well off. All of them are not like that. So they shouldn't all be just blatantly labeled like that, without knowing,
It's kind of insightful, some of the things you're stating, because it also makes me think about Black immigrants that come to our country, and they label us, they stereotype us, and they do not know us. Whereas though, here in February next month, matter of fact, I'll be going to Kenya. I'm traveling out to Nairobi, and I'm gonna hit Mombasa. I'm gonna be out there maybe 2 weeks or so. Just taking my wife and I. But what I realize is when they come over here, not understanding our lineage, not understanding our history, not understanding our culture, because again, they will go into, oh, Black Americans don't have any culture. And then we were like, we have the same thing that you have. We have our own foods, we have our own dances. And don't forget, we also have American culture. So that's mixed in with it as well, right? We have, like, I always like to pop up, the Black Heritage flag, because some people still rock with this, some people, don't. I know we still rocking the FBA, but we also have the Heritage flag, which it states here, the purpose of the flag is to convey and represent pride in the history of Black Americans. The Black American Heritage flag is a representation of the pain, remember, from degrading days of slavery to undeniable contributions of Black America to the history of the United States. So we have a lot of pride in who and what we are, and they're not understanding who we are and how they get resources and benefits above us because America wants to deny us what's owed to us. Rather, they're like, oh, we don't have it right now. We don't have your reparations because we may need to study about it. And also we have all these immigrants inside of the country illegally, as well as the legal immigrants. They get more benefit and support than we do as well. Not stating that all of us are poor, because almost half of Black Americans are in the middle class. And then when you take into the other echelons of, your class status, but we still have a greater significant number of people who are living at and below the poverty line than any other racial group and any other ethnic group in America.
Correct. That was very well put. That's
I didn't mean to stump you, brother.
I mean that was very well put. And to piggyback off of that, or really just to highlight off of that, you're right. When we say things like we're poor and things, right, and some people be all like, well, I'm not poor. You know what I'm saying? It becomes a thing of, I feel like that too is a little bit of a pride thing, because nobody wants to be the poor. Oh yeah, I'm poor. People don't claim to be poor with pride. You know what I'm saying? I think when people say that, it can get certain people, and especially people who have not lived in that experience. Like, for instance, if you came up through you came up through the trenches and you made it, you still view, we grew up poor and everything. And to a degree, that can confuse some people into thinking like, well, being poor is a choice, or not, my parents made it, why can't your parents make it? And that's when a lot of the immigrants and a lot of the disrespect in the immigrants, they come here because they're looking at, well, my parents made it, so why can't your parents make it, or whatever the case is. Right. They're not doing anything that we have not been doing. Nothing that they're doing coming over here has not already been done by Black Americans. But the thing is that they've been cherry picked and selected. If you take the top 10 smartest doctors in Nigeria, they're gonna beat the average Black American by a mile. If you take the top 10 smartest doctors in Nigeria and compare them to the top 10 smartest doctors in Black America, they're not gonna beat them. So you're comparing their best to our average, and then you have their offspring kind of wagging their finger and being condescending to us and saying things like, well, y'all got to pull yourselves up by your bootstraps and stop being lazy and stop doing this and stop doing this. When we say us as Black America are poor, we're not really speaking individually. We're speaking collectively. Correct. Among collective in comparison to all of these other groups of people. Like you said, we are not all poor, but of the poorest, we have the highest percentage. Exactly. So that's what we say when we bring that up. And the immigrants are coming over here because, number one, they have anti-Blackness in their minds. Mm-hmm. Okay. They stereotype us, and they're not looking at the situation in all of its factors from a third person point of view. Like, yeah, your family is doing well. If my family went to your country, my family would be doing better than majority of your country.
That's a good point. It makes me think about not just tethers and anchor babies, but it makes me think about Black immigrants that come over and maybe they came over here at a very young age, and or they were born here. Because I've seen some videos here and there on the different social media platforms, and these were people I swore they were Black Americans until they started talking. Meaning not because of an accent, they sounded Black American, they dressed Black American the way they had their hair, because all these things that we've done, that's our culture. The way that women are doing their hair and their nails and how they wear those things, that's our culture. But when you see these women and they're speaking out against Black Americans, I'm like, well, you have you've accepted part of our culture, whether you know it or not, right?
Yeah.
You know, you don't know your country. You were born here or you came over here, but you're speaking out against a people who probably allowed you into the fold until you got off like, oh, now I don't know, I'm Nambian or whatever, you know, even though you don't really hear people from Nambia or Gambia. But go ahead, brother.
I think also a lot of our culture in this country specifically kind of gets written off as default American culture. So it's by default not ours. Like I was saying earlier, America is synonymous with black, like white, I mean. So anything that's American culture, people think by default that's our white. And we only have this small thing of, you know, hip hop music, jazz music, just kind of like that is a small aspect, or dance and stuff like that, maybe that, or basketball. These are small aspects of our culture, but I think don't understand. A lot of people really don't understand how intrinsic we are to the culture of America, period. Anytime you eat soft serve ice cream, that's really Black American culture. You know what I'm saying? Like you say, with a lot of our medical advances in this country, you know, the first open heart surgery, the fact that they put plasma blood in a bag, all of these things. Even when you talk about like what is that, Henrietta Lacks, right? Yep. And what they did with her and making different cures and treatments and stuff like that. Different doctors. There was one doctor who
you're talking about they took her stem cells out, right?
Yeah. The her DNA, and it kept replicating. You know what I'm saying? And they were able to utilize her DNA, her cells, and they were able to test different things with it and do different experiments and stuff like that with it. You know, and we've just, I mean, as Black Americans, we've been able to advance just medical
Vivian Thomas
in this country.
Vivian Thomas, he came up with the procedure to cure the blue baby syndrome. That's one.
Yeah. That's
I mean, we have a lot of advances, and historically, and I think, you know, I had this I forgot who I had this conversation with, but we were talking about when people speak about culture, right? You know, it's a couple of different things: the way you dress, the way you talk, you know, what you eat, the music you listen to, but it's also the things you have done, your people has done, your innovations, because that shaped your culture as well. And as you were referring to, all the medical advances, you know, who was the forgot the gentleman's name, but he started creating cars before Henry Ford. Something Patterson, I believe his last name was. You also had the gentleman who submitted the airship patent before the Wright brothers in 1906. I think his last name was Douglas or something like that. But like you said, we have all of these, you know, innovations and adventures, let alone the basic cultural things that most people think about, you know, Black art. And then, of course, when you think about Black art, it makes you think about rap, makes you think about hip hop, the sound and music, supposedly, of revolution. Until when I really started diving back at this Afro, especially when it comes to music, I'm kind of switching gears. I started to look at some of the first denigration of the music itself. Not like NWA, F the Police, nothing like that. But when the Two Live Crew came over here and I realized who Luke was and where he was from. Because I was trying to think, where did Black Americans started getting the twerking, started getting the shaking the butt, starting to get very profane when it came to our culture. And I just started thinking about, it wasn't Sir Mix-a-Lot, so to speak, but it was, I think it started, I think, quote, I don't really know, was the Two Live Crew. But Luke is from the Caribbean.
That's true. And if we look at certain things, to back up your point, when you look at Carnival, when they come over and they're
butt
dressed
naked out there, they butt naked.
Nothing. Yes, exactly. And they're dry humping strangers, and
right.
Some of the parties they have going on over there, where they jump off of tables and chairs and stuff
Kissing
like that,
cocktails,
humping everybody. I'm like, that doesn't happen here. Now, when you all bring that element of partying, if that's what y'all want to call it, when y'all bring that element over here and that mixes in and everything, now y'all want to say stuff is degenerate. Now y'all want to say stuff is classless.
Perfect question for you, brother. Do you believe that Black immigrant culture is now taking over what we know as Black American culture? Because I really want you to think about the music and how, think about Mos Def. I forgot his Islamic name, but think about Mos Def. Think about Rakim, LL Cool J, 50, some of their first work, even though some of that was gangster rap here and there. But when we're talking about the degeneracy, people dancing on tables, people jumping off here, people twerking in the sky, that is now what people are viewing as hip hop and Black American music. But we don't really have a strong history of creating that sort of music. And now, right, you got mumble rappers. Where did that come from? Where you can't hardly understand the person and what they're saying, as well as drill rap. So not that it's a total takeover, but do you believe that Black immigrant culture has either taken over or influenced Black American hip hop?
I would say so. And I believe it's because of the white power structure. They've elevated it and they've made it synonymous. Like, for instance, what you say, drill music and everything, or gangster music in and of itself.
That's all it is, right? Drill music is gangster music, right?
Yeah, it kind of really is. It's like it's a derivative of that.
Correct.
Of gangster music. You know what I'm saying? You've had that, and a lot of that was reflecting on certain conditions and stuff like that. And a lot of that, immigrants come over and they don't understand the cultural background and significance to it. They're just looking at it in a certain sense. That's why they're looking at it like, okay, this is catchy, which is why they make a lot of catchy music, but they don't make a lot of music that really gets remembered. In the dominant society, they elevate those people, and then those people claim to be us. Like, for instance, Nicki Minaj has made a video. I think she was on an interview.
Countless claims.
Yes, she's made that, and if you listen to her speak in certain instances, she makes it seem as if she's a Black American. Correct. As if she's FBA, but she's not. And a lot of these other people, sometimes you'll hear them talking about, and we was in chains and we went through, they'll say we went through slavery and we went through this and we went through that. When they're trying to be a part of our culture, they make it seem like we're all the same thing. We're all the same ethnicity of people, when they want to influence hip hop or our culture specifically. Now, when it comes to, I was about to say CARICOM. When it comes to, when it comes to Carnival, I don't know if you've seen it, but they have videos in Carnival where they
Oh
are
yeah,
like,
I've seen some of it. Oh
Carnival's
yeah,
Caribbean. Leave that alone.
right. And,
So they have influence
go
to
ahead. Go
a
ahead.
degree. I'm just saying they have influence to a degree. Yeah.
Absolutely. It kind of just makes me think about everything, um, you know, basically what people look at as degenerate and they call it our culture. And I look at when it and where it first started. Now I'm pretty sure there's a lot of Black American artists that are dealing in that sort of behavior. But here's the thing, by her saying, we've done this, it makes me again think about these damn Democrats, man, these democrats. And the reason why I say that, I know we're kind of turning gears here, but instead of speaking to someone prominent in Black society with a brain, they go out and speak to a rapper who is not even Black American. This is how disrespectful the Democrats are to Black folk, and we're still not getting it because depending on what generation you're from, a lot of hopefully this is not true, but I believe that a lot of our young Black folks don't really look at where people are from like we do, and they're just following it because they quote unquote say they're Black, even though not Nicki Minaj but Cardi B was going back and forth if she was Black or not.
Yeah.
Is it so much? Is it so much for me? Because when you look at these presidential candidates, you look at Joe Biden, he didn't go to any of these other communities and speak to their hip hop artists and their R&B singers. Like, why are you speaking to entertainers versus intellectual and people part of the Black community other than Roly Poly Martin? I just don't get it.
You're absolutely right. Malcolm X even spoke about that years ago. He was all like, none of the entertainers are and he didn't diss the entertainers.
No, he didn't diss them.
Every community has their own entertainers,
Right.
But their entertainers stay in their lane. We're the only community where the entertainers are also the political activists, and they're also the people we're the only people who act like the entertainers need to be the leaders of the community.
Right.
Joe Biden, he wouldn't have talked to George Lopez and had said, well, George, what do the Hispanic community need? What does the Mexican community need? No, you're going to talk to an economist. You're going to talk to a professor, a doctor, someone who's studied the subject and understands and is a better representative of what their people need. He wouldn't have talked to Jet Li, he wouldn't have talked to Jackie Chan, he would talk to one of their professors, their doctors, or even one of their activists. If they, they're activists in their community. But with us, you're sitting up there talking to Cardi B. Someone who doesn't even speak really on Black issues
at all. But here's and again, I'm just speculating here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it that the white supremacists, they know us better than we know ourselves, where they say, well, we're going to prop up 1% of Black society. And this 1% of Black society are going to be the most influential, talented people that are going to do some of the most ratchet, raunchy, and degenerating things. Then we're going to, instead of them always picking these Black struggle leaders, these Black civil rights leaders, these Black empowerment leaders, we're going to appoint their leaders for them. And all that they're going to be doing is wasting their time shaking ass and having babies. Yeah. I wonder if that was part of the agenda.
That's a good theory. When you said they know us better than than we know ourselves, I feel like majority of that's true. They understand because they're implementing this. They understand the conditions and they understand the results of people who are in these conditions. And better than I'm not going to say all of us, me, you, and we have other brothers and sisters who are listening to us who might understand, who are more studious on this issue, but the collective don't understand the conditions that they've been in. They don't understand that their thoughts are really because of the fact that your people have been so conditioned to think a certain way. So, for instance, when they say, hey, your ancestors died for you to vote, we've been conditioned to feel like, hey, but Joe Biden is a racist.
Correct.
They're racist over there. So why would we go out there and blindly vote for them? That doesn't even make sense. But they have conditioned the people to be all like, your people died for you to have the right to vote. We know who you're going to vote for if you vote. All we got to do is convince you to go to the polls. We don't even necessarily have to convince you to vote for the Democrats. We know you're going to do that as long as you get to the polls. So that's all we have to do. They understand the level of conditioning that they've put on our people, and majority of our people aren't aware of that.
I would definitely agree with that. I just think that, when it comes to voting, either we are picking our nails or sitting on the couch. But I listened to Professor Black Truth broadcast today about, Donald Trump winning the Iowa caucus by 30 points, and he had a massive breakdown. Trump again may take it on, and I'm no friend of Trump, and Trump is no friend of black folk. It's not like he's coming and talking for people, but we're kind of doing the same thing that we did with Joe Biden. We're like, oh, we're going to take the lesser of two evils, and the same person, Donald Trump, that we know evil, right? But we'd rather take that evil person. I'm just saying, hey, listen. When we didn't go out to vote, Donald Trump got elected. We're still here. If anything, he probably put a couple of more dollars in people's pocket. But again, that's not incentive enough to go out and vote for Donald Trump, because he stated after his after the primaries for the Iowa caucus that he's going to give policemen more protections. And the Democrats did the same thing. The only thing they didn't do is say, oh, we're going to put in some legislation. We're going to introduce legislation to fraction or weaken qualified immunity, which they didn't. Joe Biden gave the police more money. So when I think about both parties, again, I'm one of them people who just going to sit on the couch and pick his nails, because I know until they put some tangibles, whether it be cash payment reparations, wiping away qualified immunity, but that's kind of like for everyone sort of thing, but making foundational Black American a protected class and instilling a system of justice, then I mean, what is the point of me getting off my couch? I mean, can we get one? Now, they know they owe us reparations, but they say, hey, we're going to create legislation. Here it is, executive order ready to be signed of making Black Americans a protected class. Do you believe that is enough for us to get off the couch? Or do you think it's all or nothing?
To me, would just the protected class thing be enough? No, it wouldn't be enough. That wouldn't be enough, because here's my thing, is that they can do that, but and then not implement that.
True.
If you give us more than that, what we are demanding, you know what I'm saying? Then even if you try to low key not implement one of those things, you still have the other things. I'm an all for nothing type of dude. You're not asking for half my vote. You're not asking for a quarter of my vote. You're asking for 100% of my vote. So I need 100% of my demands met.
I'll say this, and I guess this is me being compromised. If they somehow, because again, until they're in office, the Democrats are in office, and he can enact an executive order right now for cash payment reparations, right? If he was to do that on our terms that we state for the amounts or very close to the amount, I'll vote.
I would too. Yeah.
I'll vote. Now, what I'm saying though, that comes without being a protected class, and that that also comes without essentially wiping away the system of white supremacy. But I think we start to dismantle it when we start closing that, that wealth gap and having, quote unquote, the same resources and support financially that the white power structure have. So I would vote for that. But again, you made a very good point, because I always would tell myself reparations is number one. You're not going to surpass my number one and give me number two. No, no, no. The first thing is this. Now, these are equally as important, but this one is super important because as Black folk, not only are we owe it, we need it.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. If Joe Biden gave us if tomorrow morning he was all like, you know what, reparations, if he doesn't shortball it, you know what I'm saying, and say reparations is like what, $3 million of
hell no.
The dispersed
you mean each person? You mean each person?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about just collective. If he doesn't shortball it, because he would do the, I can see, because I've heard people talk about, man, maybe 10 mil. No. You give the number you supposed to give, and you give it to the people you're supposed to give it to. Don't try to say, don't reparations and then people of color or minority, and then next thing you know, everybody and their mama got reparations. You know, if you give the right amount to the people you're supposed to, I don't have no what they I think it was our brother Jason Black who said this. We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies, only permanent interests.
That's true.
So, hey, if you doing what's in my interest, in the interest of my people, you can get my vote.
Absolutely. This is definitely another topic we're gonna have to pick up another day. But I would like to thank you, Brother Afro Elite, and dealing with the topic we had at hand when it comes to nationality, race, and origin. What's your last remarks on the subject?
Well, my thing is that I feel people really need to understand that those three things are very different things. Sometimes in conversation, we have used them synonymously because, to be very honest, the world is very segregated. You know what I'm saying? Most countries are filled with only one type of people, only one
90%. Yep.
You know, so when we say places like Haiti, you will automatically, you're kind of already implying black ethnicity and nationality a part of one, because it's so segregated. There's no other group of people in there.
Correct.
You know, so in those certain cases, I can understand, and it can get easy for people to make all three of those things be the same thing. But in cases like America, they're not the same thing. So it's good for us to understand and move past that and educate ourselves so we can understand those are three different things, and understand that I'm black as an American, just the same way a black person is from Haiti, the same way a black person is in Nigeria or South America. You know, our ethnicity and our nationality are very, very different, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not dissing them. I'm not dissing them in Africa or Haiti or wherever. I'm not dissing them, but we are very different. You know what I'm saying? So we have to, once we understand those differences, I think we can respect each other a little more, or they can respect us, because it's not like we disrespecting them, but yeah, you know, we can have more mutual respect.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Brother Afro Elite. I do appreciate your knowledge, brother. Thank you for joining me on this broadcast today. I'm going to put you in the backstage very quickly. Family, go ahead and subscribe to Afro Elite's channel. He has a YouTube channel, Afro Elite, as well as a Twitter. Make sure you support that brother, very intelligent brother, doing the work, I believe, in Chicago, and also on a grassroots activist as well. When we talk about these three things, we talk about nationality, race, and ethnic. Understand there's a difference. Understand that Black Americans, we have a racial code that was implemented on us from a very early stage. So when we look at the term Black, we're not talking about being American. We're talking about being a race. And for people who are confused, your nationality is not your race. Your nationality is the country in which you were born in, the country in which you have your citizenship is. When it comes to race, according to the white supremacist power structure, okay, you have Caucasian, you have Black, you have Hispanic, which is not even a race because they're a mixture of different races. They have different ethnic groups as well. And then we have ethnic groups where we are 1,000 years removed from Africa. So we are a different ethnic group that has delineated with the term foundational Black American, which ties to our heritage and our lineage base, so we can delineate and understand our own racial sub-ethnic group. I thank everyone for joining us here today on Blacklogic. Thank brother Afro Elite for coming out once again, and please support that brother as well. This is Blacklogic. Be one.